Welcome to Never Rewrite. I'm Isaac Askew.
And I'm Jeffrey Sherman. And today, Isaac is going to tell us a story.
So, this is a story unrelated to our podcast, but it is just hilarious enough coming from a paranoid tech person
It's a
to
funny
share.
Friday.
A funny Friday, maybe unrelated to it is unrelated to rewriting, but not unrelated to some technology. Anyway,
Okay.
here goes. So, I have been looking to tattoo my left arm for a very long time. I'm trying to get a sleeve going, right?
But why the left?
I want the left. So, either way. So I've been working with some tattoo artists. I talked to somebody back in Chicago in 2019 before COVID. Didn't work out artistically. So I ended up kind of losing a deposit after trying to work with this artist for a bit. I'm like, And so I realized I needed to get some more ideas together before I went to a tattoo artist with what I wanted to help kind of expedite the process. Years go by, and it becomes a meme that, I'm going to get my tattoo done this year.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it's 2025 now. I still don't have this tattoo. So,
And you're using AI to render a tattoo on your arm, right?
I actually did talk to ChatGPT to help me understand how I could come up with better ideas or how I could communicate what I wanted to the tattoo artist. It actually did a pretty decent job because it would ask me like what style shading I wanted. I didn't know the types, so it helped explain the different types to me and help me narrow down what I wanted. So, and then you could actually use it to generate images too, and some of them are pretty terrible. But
right, that's
it can
what
help you.
I thought you were going to generate, now that I've said it, I kind of want to know if it exists, a generative AI for tattoos where you're like, imagine my left arm here, I'll upload a picture and now start placing tattoos and I'll print it out and I'll take it to an artist.
This does something similar. Like I can say, give me a tattoo sleeve, and it'll actually print out a picture of an arm with a tattoo on it. But they're like, it's comical, like the stuff it puts on there. Like you explain what you want and what you don't want, and it doesn't care what you don't want, and we'll keep adding those elements in. So, anyway, I used it. At one point, I'm like, okay, I think I have a decent idea enough to communicate this to an artist. Let's try the process again, and I will censor the names of individuals in this particular flow because of reasons you'll understand at the end. So either way,
we've got a huge number of tattoo artists listening to this show, I'm sure.
So I'm in Westminster, Colorado, just north of Denver. So I started and I don't know any of the tattoo artists in this area. I was looking in Chicago last. Mm-hmm. So I just put tattoo artists near Denver. That's, Denver's a sizable city. I figured it would have some good artists. And I found a lot of good artists, but none that did the style that I was really looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Or the people who did do that style. It wasn't, I looked at their catalog and it wasn't quite what I was going for. So I zoomed out a bit and I said, great tattoo artists in Colorado, right? And I did get a hit from a studio that was awesome. And I'm like, whoa, this is fantastic. And so I go to the website for the studio.
Mm-hmm.
I look through all the different styles and all the different people, all the different ratings people have given, just accolades for the studio. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna apply for. You can select the artist from that studio that you want, like in a form at the bottom of the website, the style that you want, give some descriptions, and upload some inspiration of other tattoos that you do like to kind of help them get a picture of what you're going for. So I fill that out, hit submit, and then a short time later, like maybe a day or so, I get word back that, hey, one of the tattoo artists here, really loves your idea. Can we get on a phone call and chat about this? And I'm like, sure. That's exciting. That was a fast turnaround. Great. So I get on the call with this person, and he's excited, and he's like, well, do you know anything about this studio and this artist? And I'm like, not really. I was just kind of on Google looking around. And they're like, well, this person is like world famous. Like you found somebody, like you should look them up. Like outside of this website, you should look up like their Wikipedia page. I'm like, oh.
All right.
So this person, and I won't give into too many details about like them until a later episode for a follow up episode.
Well, you'll have to show off what they did, or maybe you're not hiring them.
So they said, this person's famous. They really loved your idea, and we'd love to book you at some point. They're not going to be free in the next. They have a huge backlog, but we might be able to get you in at the end of March, because there could be 2 cancellations at the end of March, maybe. Well, and I'm like, well, I'm game for that, but they are quite expensive, and we do need to half the deposit down first. And I'm like, all right, well, hey, send me the follow up email on all this. At the time I had to go to an appointment, and he's like, sounds good. So I go to the appointment, get back. I get an email, and they're like, here's all the things we want from you. Like, here's some examples of this. Put some examples of this person's work that you did like, you didn't like. Again, like more stuff to kind of help the artist out. And at the very end of it, with the order of thousands of dollars of a deposit.
Well, I know where the paranoid part of my brain is going. Yes.
To a PayPal account. Here's the PayPal account here. And be sure to choose the friends and family option. And take a screenshot of the payment. And I'm like, I work in finance currently, so I was like, okay, this is some red flag stuff. And so I'm like, I look it up. I'm like, what is friends and family option? And that's the option you select that does not give you buyer protection for in case of fraud. And I'm like, oh my God, I was so excited about this artist. I realized they were famous. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of coming together as like, okay, we selected you, you're so special. They loved your idea. We just need you to give us money quickly and take a screenshot of it and disable fraud protection with this particular option. Everything. I'm like, and so I raise an eyebrow that I see it comes from a different domain name than the one that I applied to. It's still a related domain name, but a different. And I could see my original request got forwarded from the original domain to this person. And I start doing some interesting things. And then the phone call came from out of state, came from a different location. It came from like Illinois instead of expected Colorado. And I'm like, okay, all this is getting
that doesn't mean
weird.
Anything these days.
Not necessarily, but I was expecting to hear from the studio itself, maybe.
Oh,
so either way,
right? That's a yellow flag, but not a red flag.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so a lot of interesting flags, green flags.
A lot of flags.
Green, yellow, and red, actually. So this process popped up, and to the point where I'm like, okay, well, this is risky. It actually did like reverse look up on the phone number to see if that person worked there. Did a reverse look up on the domains to see how old the domains were, both domains. And they were both pretty old. It wasn't like a fraudulent person tried to play middleman in between the request to this famous person or something like that. But, I was doing a lot of research trying to figure it out. And so I'm like, I'm finally just going to call the studio.
That's what I was about to say. Did you call?
So I called the studio and said, hey, I talked to somebody who said I could get in with somebody who's, apparently quite booked. And, that seems kind of rare. Does this person work there? And they were like, oh, yeah, that's this person's manager that called you. And I'm like, do you know if they booked with someone named Isaac? Like, is this the same person, essentially? Because I can't prove the person on the phone earlier was the same person they're talking about. They could be impersonating or whatever. Again, I was getting super paranoid with the whole process. And they were like, well, I don't have access to their schedule. They're that person's manager, but, I could have them call you back. And so I respond to both, emails saying, hey, this PayPal method is not, it feels weird to me. Are there any other options I could pay with? And it would be great if you could call me back from the studio's number. And they call me back from the studio's number. But at this point, I'm
spoof caller ID.
It could be a spoof caller. And so I was like, I'm so like distrustful at this point. I'm trying to find a reason. So it's comical. And at one point, the guy's like, I could FaceTime you from the location. And I'm like, no, I don't know. And I'm just kind of like, I'm so weirded out by it. I'm talking to my friends too. And they're like, dude, this is a scam. And I'm like, maybe, but there's so many elements to this that actually are kind of real that if it's a scam, it is like the best scam.
Right. Well, if it's a multi-$1,000 deposit, like it's a good scam.
Right. I was just thinking,
like come to Because they're saying maybe we have cancellations in March, and then if not, we'll push you off till May or something, right? You'll be like 6
Yeah,
months
right. And
before
I'm just
you're like,
well, I mean, think about it. Like they could keep going. Like, but by the time I could like pay for something, show up in a month, and they
mm-hmm.
go, "Who are you? You've never booked here,"
Yeah.
So, but then I was just thinking, okay, well, let's pretend this site was somehow hacked. It was the main studio website. If
Mm-hmm.
somebody could just get access or CC'd on any of those requests that go out, they could intercept
Mm-hmm.
first. That person has a huge backlog of 50,000 emails a day. You get a couple and say, yeah, I'm, this person, and then make your own fake PayPal account, and then by the time you show up, you've been had,
Right. Yeah, they're gone.
And so again, like, we have to take all this kind of fraud stuff training every year for compliance anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So part of me is just like, this whole process is weird. Plus, why in the world would somebody who's like this famous want to use the friends and family option to, get their money and save on some fees or whatever,
Cheap people. People are cheap, but yeah, it's really sketchy.
It was a bit sketchy.
You just
so
increase your prices if you're world
just
famous.
Increase the prices or let the person know you could pay through this other method, but you have to pay some fees. And, it could be a small amount of fees based on how much your tattoo could cost in the end. But anyway, so I respond back and I'm like, look, I would prefer, to meet this person in person before I put that kind of deposit down. And the guy's like, again, this guy is a celebrity. He's not just going to meet you. But I see what you're saying about, because he realizes it does come across as kind of scammy. And he's like, well, I'll tell you what, this is his manager. And he's like, I have a meeting with him tomorrow. Our tattoo shop is closed tomorrow, or I guess this wasn't tomorrow, but it was like a couple days later. It's closed that day. But if you come in, you can meet him. And I'm like, all right.
Yeah, okay.
And it's a fair distance away. Like it's
everything in Colorado
half a day
is
away from me.
Yeah.
And so I talked to Rebecca and I say, hey, do you want to, Rebecca's for listeners is my fiance. And so I talked to her and say, hey, do you want to hop on the Amtrak and let's just take an impromptu trip this weekend to go to the studio to prove this guy is not trying to scam me out of my money. And we're like, okay, we put the dog in daycare, and she's like, let's do it. So we go there, get a hotel for the night at this location. Again, I can't really give it away because you would know exactly.
Sure.
People who would Google the location would know exactly where it's at, or exactly what artist I'm talking about. Rather, we show up there, or rather, she has to work that day, and so I show up there at the tattoo place, and I meet the manager. And he takes me down, and I meet the celebrity tattoo artist. And all real. It is all real. It sounds the scammiest sketchy, way. This is the scammiest way to try to get some
business.
Well, I find out this person they just took over as manager recently, and they're trying to restructure a bunch of stuff. And this was the artist's preferred method back in the day, and now they're a lot bigger, and there's a lot more requests, and there's like actual, legitimate reasons for them to still have done things in this old method, and they're just trying to get things organized now after a lot of disorganization. But I did get to meet the person in flesh, and I toggled throughout this entire process of like excited to no, I'm feeling like this is a scam again, to excited again, and just like I was so baffled when it turned out to be real and I actually got to meet this person who's been on television and like shoot the shit with them for 30 minutes before finally going, okay, I would like to book with you.
Right. Now that I know it's real. Well, because you wanted to book with him before, you just weren't sure that he was really him.
Right. And also, I didn't even know at the time that this person was famous enough to have their own Wikipedia page. So we'll see how it goes. In a couple of months, we'll have a follow-up episode, and we'll see if I get my my arm tattooed finally. But it was a pretty interesting series of events.
Yes. For those of listeners who think Isaac is being paranoid, when I worked at a mortgage company, this exact scam was going on,
Mm-hmm.
and several people, like several of the people working at the mortgage company, their emails had been compromised, and so it would be getting to
Exactly. Yeah.
closing, and their things have been set up so to auto forward the information to a hacker, and then delete the email so that the person responsible for working the closing didn't know about it, and then that
Mm-hmm.
hacker would send the person the wiring information to their bank accounts. And remember, you're dealing with housing transactions. So this is like, okay,
Deposits. Yeah.
the deposit of 300, 400, $1 million is going to go to the wrong account.
Mm-hmm.
And the customers, and they, because they told the bank to do it, and the customer is going to sit there, like they're at the closing table with the lawyers and everything else, and they're waiting, they're waiting for the wire to go through, and they're waiting and they're waiting and they're waiting. The bank's like, I did the wire, just like you said. And they're like, reading back the email that they had that seemed to come from our company. And like, yep, everything's good. I don't know why the other bank says they don't have it. Do they have it? No. And wired it straight to Nigeria,
Exactly.
or wherever. And this happens.
Totally. Yeah. In fact, as we were buying our home this past April, there was like all kinds of emails about that kind of wire fraud scams, and make sure the number is calling is this number, and you have to have a number you can read back to them to prove whatever. And it was just like it was clear that there was just a lot of wire fraud going on. But even still, like we've seen, you can spoof phone numbers that are calling you. You can spoof email addresses, or do what you're talking about, where you hijack the email.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in the world of AI coming up too, I imagine it will be
voice and background.
voices. Eventually, if you have enough pictures of somebody, you can have like a webcam set up projecting someone else's face and body on top of you and their voice. Like I've seen a demo of that, so it's going to get even weirder in the future.
Yeah,
but even I wasn't going that crazy with it, but the level of alertness I had now was like certainly a reasonable level, because it with how much money you put down for nice tattoo artists. I was like, oh, may as well just take a train trip to verify you're a real person.
Yes,
it's worth the money.
It totally was worth the money.
Worth the money.
Awesome. Well, this is a fun story. Thank you all for listening. I'm Jeffrey Sherman.
And I'm Isaac Askew, and this is Never Rewrite.